Hi everyone, welcome to today's Raygun webinar. My name is Zheng and I'm the VP of Product at Raygun. I'm here with our Customer Success Manager, Joyce, today, and we're going to be sharing some tips and tricks on building faster issue resolution workflows within software teams. Now, before we get started, if you have any questions during the webinar, you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom window to get in touch with us. We'll be answering your questions at the very end. We also have Nick from our marketing team on the line right now. He will be triaging your questions as we go. We'll also be posting the links to any resources that we will be mentioning in this webinar in the follow-up email. So let's get started.
All right, thank you, Zheng, for the intro. Hey, everyone, this is Joyce. I want to thank you all for joining us. Here are some of the topics that we'll be covering during our session. What is an application inside of Raygun and how you set it up? Ways to prioritize issues and managing your error inbox. Integrations and your workflow. How to replicate an error with breadcrumbs. And getting the whole context of the error through real user monitoring. So one thing that I'm commonly told by a lot of our clients is that a lot of them have different tools that they use and different tools that they're currently working with. And this can cause a lot of issues moving from one tool to the next. So this is something that may be fairly similar to what your current workflow looks like. But with moving into Raygun, what we can do is we actually are able to help integrate with your existing tools to help you resolve issues more efficiently. We'll be able to streamline your workflow by helping you detect any issues within your code, notify you on those issues, and then also quickly help you diagnose the problems. And then along the way, we'll be supporting you on resolving those issues. So let's go ahead and dive into the demonstration site. So one thing that we want to talk about first is what is an application? So inside of Raygun, we have here an application switcher. So an application is very different inside of Raygun compared to what your typical application may be, which is like a mobile application, a desktop application, or even a web application. Inside of Raygun, an application is specifically just a container of data. So think of it like a filing cabinet. Where do you want to place all those files or your errors to stay more organized? So some of these may be separating your data into environments. You can separate them into languages. You can also separate them into brands. So any way that you see fit that's best for you, go ahead and separate that specific to your use case. And we'll just need to set that up, or to set it up, you'll just need to have an API key to let Raygun know where you want those errors to go. So for this purpose, we're going to use the demonstration site. We're going to use the website version. The first thing we'll do is we'll hop right into the crash reporting. So the first thing that you'll be noticing is that you'll be seeing errors by day. So this is going to be at the very top chart, and the bottom chart is going to be more of your workflow. This is going to be your error inbox. So inside of this, this is going to be where you want to primarily focus. At Raygun, we uniquely identify your errors and group them together based on stack trace and error message. So as you are working inside of Raygun, you're going to be mostly working out of the active tab. But we also do have the very first thing you'll be noticing is when you first set up Raygun, it'll be set up by last seen. What we usually like to recommend is for you to pay attention to who your users are and how they're impacted by those errors. So you want to prioritize that by how your users are. So that way you can see the top errors are impacting the most users. And that's the best method to address those specific errors. So inside of these tabs, we have My Errors, and that would be any errors that are designated to you or assigned to you. Your active errors is going to be all of your errors that are being fed into. We have Resolved Errors, which you can mark any error that is resolved, and when it reoccurs, you'll go ahead and get another notification. We have Ignored Errors. Ignored errors are where you want to place some of those junk errors. It's a way to remove anything from your active feed, and then when they reoccur, you will go ahead and get a notification as well. We also have Permanently Ignored Errors. So this is where you don't want to have a notification at all. You can mark third-party errors as permanently ignore, anything that's non-critical, or errors that you just cannot fix on the development side. So when you put the permanently ignore errors, you'll have a checkbox that you can select to not capture any new errors, and that way you won't share on your error chart at the top. So now that you know ways on how to set up your application, how to manage your error inbox, what we want to do is how do you get an overview on all of your software? And we do that by giving you the dashboard. So we'll hop into a dashboard here. So with the dashboard, you're able to get a quick glance at all the applications you want to see and the total error count. So here you can see the sessions and all of the live data. This is going to be found into another tool that's called Real User Monitoring. We'll touch base on this a little briefly today, but this may be something we'll talk about a little bit more in depth on another webinar. I have a lot of different clients that use the dashboard based on teams. You're also able to use it or customize the dashboard any way that you want. I have people who are on the business side, they may have a dashboard so that they can get a quick glance and see how the health of their software or how their software is performing. So one great thing about it is you can set it on TVs, and you can go ahead and set it onto a TV mode. And this is a way for you to get a quick glance at where your errors are and where those errors are coming from. So let's dive a little bit deeper onto the integrations and workflow. I'm going to go ahead and pass this back over to Zheng, and she'll talk about that.
Thank you very much, Joyce. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, so let's talk about integrations. So integrations is a great way to make sure that you have all of your everything you need across the board inside Raygun. So we have about 30 integration partners across chat ops, issue tracking, alerting, source control, and other categories, as you can see here. I'll only be demoing 3 today, which is JIRA, GitHub, and Slack, because these are our most popular integrations. The screens I'll be showing you are very generic, so the principles are very much the same, and they're very easy to set up. Let's first jump into a JIRA example. So I'm looking at a error detail page, and with this error, I have it linked to a JIRA issue already. So you can see it has popped up with the JIRA icon with the issue number. And if I click on that, it will take me inside JIRA, and it will give me some details about the error group, and it will also provide a link back to Raygun crash reporting. And if you click on that link, it will take you back to the page that we were just looking at. So that's a really good way, if you're using JIRA, to be able to create an issue straight from Raygun crash reporting without having to go into JIRA and do that separately. So a lot of people ask me, how easy is it to actually set it up? It's actually quite simple. So if you have never integrated JIRA before, all you need to do is come back to the integration sidebar and click on JIRA. And the setup is very simple. You just need to put in your credentials, and it will ask what project you want that to be and all of your details. Once you have that hooked up, you'll be able to create an issue straight from inside an error group. So let's take a look at one now. So let's have a look at this one. I want to create a JIRA issue, so I click on integrations and JIRA. I can now create a new JIRA issue, or I can link to an existing one. If I create a new JIRA issue, it will prompt me for where I wanted to save that issue, what project. And if it's linked to an existing issue, I just need to put the JIRA number associated with this, and that's all it takes. And before you know it, you already have a JIRA link on the sidebar here. So the next one I wanted to mention is GitHub. GitHub issues are very similar to JIRA. So all you need to do is come to integrations, click on GitHub, and the same thing, either create a new one or link to an existing issue. What's really great about the GitHub integration is that we actually have a different integration with GitHub that's very useful for developers. It's a feature that we call link to source. So we're inside an error group now that has link to source feature. And you'll see that under the stack trace, we have a little GitHub icon here. And this will take me, if I click on it, directly to GitHub, and I can view my source code. So let's do that now. So you can see that it's now taking me to GitHub, and I'm looking at the code in my GitHub repository. And not that you would want to do this, but if you want to change the code directly from here, you can do that. This is a really, really great feature because a lot of customers tell us that it can sometimes take anywhere between 40 minutes to 6 weeks to go from seeing the code in Raygun to actually accessing their code. So this makes it very easy to go directly from what you're looking at to your code. Very simple there. Okay. So the next one I want to talk about is, and before I jump onto that, this link back to source feature is very popular and it works across GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitLab. So if you're using any of these Git repositories, these will be very handy to you. Okay, let's jump into another integration now and have a look at the Slack one. So Slack is one of our most popular ones as well. It allows you to send notifications into a Slack channel, and it's very easy to set up as well. All you need to do is click on Slack in the sidebar under integrations, and you'll come into the setup page. You'll put in your credentials and you'll get a list of options here. You can include tags, you can get things like get notified if there's interactive message for you. It's very, very easy to set up, and it is one of our most popular integrations. I'll see if I can find a image of this. So let's have a look at an example now of the two-way sync and the feature. So if you have the Slack integration here, it will send a notification into the Slack channel, and it will allow you to either ignore, activate, or assign this issue to yourself. So that's very simple. And if you do that, you will also resolve the issue inside Raygun crash reporting. There's also a very handy mention feature, which means that if you are inside a history tab here and you are typing a message to your colleague and you mention them, if their username is associated with the Slack username, it will also notify them in Slack, like so. So that just makes a seamless process when you're inside Slack and you're working on something and you suddenly get a notification about something that maybe you want to look at, you'll get notified without having to log into Raygun. Okay, so a lot of customers do tell me that what if I'm just getting too many notifications, not just inside Slack, but maybe just generally. All you need to do is to mute your notifications or change your notifications. And to do that, you need to come to the Manage Notifications page, and you just need to click on your name and click on My Notifications. So you can see that I can now see all of my crash reporting notifications across all of my apps, and I can choose to bulk click them on, or I can choose to turn them more off. As you can see, I don't have many clicked on. Most of our team actually use Slack rather than email notification. But if you do use email notification, this is a very good way to make sure that you're not getting overwhelmed with a lot of messages coming in. Okay. Let's jump into the next topic. So breadcrumbs. This is one of the most popular features from our customers. So the breadcrumb feature allows you to recreate a problem, an error, by looking at all of the actions the user might have taken when they come to this page leading up to the crash. So you can basically replicate what they were doing on this page. So if they have submitted anything or interacted with you, you can also expand on any of these points. So this gives you a full context of how they got to the page and also what they did before they encountered an error. This feature is very popular and is available in .NET, Ruby on Rails, and JavaScript, and we'll push this feature out to more providers in the near future. If you need more content and more information on this feature, check out this blog post. We'll also be linking to you at the end of the session as well. It goes into detail about how to set it up. Okay. So coming back to breadcrumbs, sometimes breadcrumbs might not be enough to diagnose the issue. It might not be a stack trace issue, and it might not be an issue that's to do with what happened on this particular page. That's when sessions are very helpful. So to get sessions set up, you will need our other product, Real User Monitoring. And if you have Real User Monitoring and crash reporting all reporting into the same app, you'll see user information cross-referenced with error data. So as you can see here, Michael from Canada, and I can see all the device information here, and I can see every page they went to prior to encountering this particular error. And this is just a short summary to give you the page before and after an error. And if I want to know the full history of what Michael did to get to that error, I just need to click on View Full Session. That will take me to our real user monitoring product that captures every page that Michael has been to in this particular session before he encountered an error. I can see what the experience is like in terms of page load. I can see device information. I can see how many errors that Michael had encountered. And I can see every page that Michael had been to and the performance of these pages. This just gives you a much richer context into what happened to Michael prior to coming into this page and then encountering that error. Because sometimes errors are quite tricky to work out if you don't have that larger context. And if you want to know more about Michael, we do have a user tracking capability so that if you have identified your users through Raygun, you can just click on Michael's name here and get to see everything about Michael and how this person has interacted with your website. So we can see all the sessions that he's experienced. We can see the user experience throughout time, and we can see any errors that Michael had experienced. So we can see that Michael had experienced quite a lot of errors, so he's probably not likely having a good experience when he comes to our website. That just gives you more information about the user. And speaking of user, if you are conscious about privacy, we do have the capability to delete users if they request the deletion. So Raygun is fully GDPR compliant. Okay, so that's pretty much the bulk of what we want to talk about today. But I'll share 2 more extra tips for you on how to optimize your workflow even more. So one of the things that is really interesting is the deployment feature inside Raygun. To get to deployments, all you need to do is to click on deployments, and you'll have a setup, step-by-step instruction on how to set that up. But once you've set that up, every time you deploy, you'll have that information being pulled into Raygun. This is very useful because if I click on a deployment version here, I'll get to see everything about that deployment in terms of crash reporting. I can see that in this deployment, I haven't introduced any new errors, which is great, but there have been some regressions, so that's something I definitely want to have a look at. And here are the errors that are still occurring, so I haven't done anything to make sure that these errors have been fixed. It also pulls in any notes if you have notes coming in, and also any commits. And if you click on commits, you'll be taken to your GitHub in this case, and view all of the details to do with that. So that's very handy because a lot of customers do say, well, we deploy a lot and we want to know whether our performance has gotten better or worse and how many new errors we've introduced and that type of thing. So with deployment, you really don't need to look at the chart. You just need to come into each deployment and get that data straight off the bat. If you do want to have a look at the chart though, we do allow you to do that. So if you have deployment set up, you can toggle on deployment when you come to the crash reporting dashboard, and that will give you a deployment chart underneath the error chart, which is very handy. You can see that on this day we've deployed twice, and then error has dropped. So we can probably conclude that that was a good deployment. And then if we want to know more, we just click on that version, and that will take me to the details of that deployment. So very easy to set up and very simple, and gives you a lot of information as well. So the next bonus tip is that if you use any sort of simplification software like JavaScript, source maps, or DSIM, or ProGuard, a very good idea is to make sure that those are all set up inside Raygun. This is a very big topic, so we won't cover it in this particular webinar, but there is a very good guide that we've written for the how to make it work with Raygun, how to make the JavaScript source maps work with Raygun. We also have extensive documents for other tools as well, so make sure that you go and check that out. So I think that's everything we want to cover in this session today. I'll pass you over to Joyce.
All right, thank you so much, Zheng. I want to thank everyone for joining us on our webinar. So if you have a few questions, feel free to type that into the Q&A box if you haven't done so already. And also, if you want to do a deeper dive on best practices specific to your use case, feel free to go ahead and message us on support@raygun.com, and then I'll work with you on that as well. So Nick, do we have any questions that have occurred?
Yes, we have a few. I think they mostly surround the kind of main crash reporting dashboard kind of error inbox section, if we want to head there. The first one would be that when someone plugs in Raygun for the first time and there's too much noise, how can they minimize that?
So Zheng, did you want to go ahead and touch base on that question?
Sure. Let's share my screen again. Okay, so too much noise. That's a common problem for a lot of people who first start using Raygun. They will start getting maybe hundreds of error groups coming in. One of the best ways to make sure that you can keep on top of the noise is to actually look at the error group and figure out whether it's something that you want to do, whether it's something you want to address or not. If it's something that you really don't want to address, such as like third-party plugins, make sure that you mark these as permanently ignored so they no longer come up. Another way is sometimes with customers who have been with Raygun for a while, they might be using an out-of-date grouping logic. So to check whether it's out of date or not, you can click on the settings area and scroll right down to the bottom under crash reporting and have a look at your error grouping strategy. So you can see here that the Raygun for Net one is up to date, but the Raygun for JS one is out of date because it says I'm on version 6 and there's a newer version available. And then from here, I can update my error grouping strategy. What it will allow you to do is that Raygun regularly updates our error grouping to make sure that things are properly grouped. And we have a lot of updates all the time, so you need to keep on top of that. If there's a new version, we suggest that you change it into a new version. And we have an extensive guide on how to do that. New versions means that errors will be grouped better. In our recent one, JavaScript 7, we actually managed to reduce the number of groups by about 83% from version 6. So that's a really big improvement just by making a very small change into the latest grouper.
Cool, thanks for that. I think you touched on the kind of second question there already around if some errors aren't grouped properly, how can people fix that?
So I've written a extensive article on this topic recently. We looked at 4 ways of how to do that, which is the first way is to look at whether you're on the latest one or not. We also find that a lot of people actually just make grouping decisions without talking to their team members. For example, if I come back into crash reporting, some people on your team might be like merging things manually without talking to other people in the business, and suddenly things are not quite right. If that happens, you just need to make sure that you talk to your co-workers and get the consent before you merge things. I had a customer who merged about something like 463 different error groups together into one super error group based on a tag. That just makes things very, very difficult, and especially when tag is filterable. So if you do have a tag, all you need to do is filter the dashboard by tag here without having to group them. So make sure that you talk it over with your team and understand what's going on. Sometimes it's an issue that you just can't get over. You might be completely disagreeing with how Raygun groups things. We group things based on stack trays, but you might be wanting to group things based on another property. In this case, we do have an advanced custom error grouping feature that we allow you to put on top of what we naturally do. So that will allow you to have more control over the grouping. So we'll make sure that we send that article to everyone after the webinar.
Cool, thanks, Zheng. We're running short of time, so we'll go with one more question. But if anybody does have any further questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out at support@raygun.com. This one's around resolving inversion. Does resolve inversion count towards my monthly error quota?
That's a really good question. So let's have a look. So when you resolve things in version, this is really useful especially for people who are on mobile providers. You no longer want to know about errors to do with earlier versions, so you want to resolve in version. There's a tick box here that says, please disregard future occurrences. So that means that if you have this checked on, Raygun will no longer track anything that matches this description, and it will not count towards your error quota. Similarly towards error permanently ignored, it's the same principle. So if you change the status into permanently ignored, there's also a checkbox set here that says do not store new occurrences. So if you have that checked on, permanently ignored also do not count towards your error quota. All right, any more questions?
No, I think that's it.
Great. Thank you very much for everyone's attendance. It's been great showing you how Raygun works and how it can get the most out of your workflow. If you have any questions, you can contact us at any time by using the Contact Raygun link in the sidebar of your Raygun app. That will just start a dialogue with us, and we'll be able to help you from there.